In today's program, Amnesty International Thailand is calling for a full investigation into the shooting of young anti-government protesters, while the family of one protester who has lost his sight in one eye is promising all-out legal action. Speaking of state violence against civilians, the last former leader of the Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia is denying charges of genocide. Details on these stories and more coming right up. You're watching Thailand News Today, bringing you the latest top stories in Thailand and beyond. The channel is supported by our Thaiger Legend members, and we would like to thank our latest supporter, Peter Brabin. Now you can be a Thaiger Legend as well by hitting the join button. And now on to our first story. Thailand's Public Health Ministry has confirmed that the total number of COVID-19 cases has now passed the 1 million mark. Today, the kingdom reported 19,851 new infections and 240 fatalities in the past 24 hours. A total of 20,478 recovered patients have been discharged from the hospital in the past 24 hours. The country has registered 1,009,710 infections since the start of the pandemic, with 8,826 deaths. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister issued a statement on his Facebook page saying that if the current restrictions and partial lockdowns in high-risk provinces are effectively implemented, some curbs could be eased from next month. The CAAT has also foreshadowed that they may restart flights into Bangkok's two airports from the end of this month. Travel bubbles are in the news again. This time, Thailand plans to launch a travel bubble arrangement with South Korea once the COVID-19 situation improves. The Tourism Authority of Thailand says the plan would allow for quarantine-free travel between the two countries, with hopes that it will provide Thailand with a much-needed tourism boost. The plan has been confirmed by TAT's Tanet Petsuwan, who will oversee international marketing for the Asia and South Pacific regions from October. He said, "My first mission is to talk to the new Chinese ambassador to Thailand about the possibility of allowing Chinese citizens to travel abroad. We are also preparing talks with South Korea to launch a tourist exchange program or travel bubble without the need for quarantine. We are also considering timing and procedures for the program's launch once the COVID-19 situation in Thailand unwinds." TAT offices in the region are hell-bent on promoting the kingdom to vaccinated Asian travelers, as tourists participating in the Phuket Sandbox scheme and the Samui Plus reopening have been primarily Europe and the US. Amnesty International Thailand is calling for a full investigation into the shooting of young anti-government protesters, with one teenager currently in a coma. The unnamed 15-year-old was shot in the back of the neck, while a 14- and 16-year-old were also shot with live rounds. The father of the 14-year-old has already filed a police complaint. However, his son, who has been discharged from the hospital, says he can't be sure if the bullet was fired by police, adding that it may have come from a group of teenagers near the scene at the time. The Metropolitan Police Bureau have protested their innocence, insisting no live rounds were used to break up the protest, which took place in the capital last Monday around the Dindang intersection. But while the Bureau says only rubber bullets were used, a statement from Amnesty International Thailand says the bullet found in the 15-year-old's skull appeared to be live ammunition. Meanwhile, the Haiso family of an anti-government protester injured and losing sight in one eye during a demonstration has promised all-out legal action against what they describe as a heavy-handed crackdown on protesters. Tanat Tanakit Amnoy, a 29-year-old who's been called by the nickname Haiso Luknat, was injured during protests in the capital on August the 13th. The family says Tanat sustained a semicircular cut to his right eyebrow, apparently caused by the impact of a blunt cylindrical object they claim to be a rubber bullet or tear gas canister. The doctors say his right cornea was torn, his right eyeball was ruptured, and that he has lost sight in his right eye permanently. The family says police failed to follow the international practice of firing tear gas in a ballistic trajectory. Starting next Tuesday, Kratom can be grown, and its leaves, which have mild psychedelic effects, will be able to be sold commercially in the land of smiles without the threat of prosecution. Also, people who have been detained for Kratom-related offenses will be released and their charges will be dropped. Currently, there are 1,038 people in prison for Kratom-related offenses. They will also be released following the enactment of Thailand's amended narcotics law. The Royal Gazette has announced that Kratom has now been taken off the list of Category 5 controlled narcotics in Thailand. But a government spokesperson has warned the public that mixing the newly legal leaves with other substances, such as cough syrup, to make the cocktail referred to as 4 by 100 is still not allowed. He also says that importing and exporting Kratom leaves or products on a commercial scale requires a license. A study from the Thailand Development Research Institute claims that the decriminalization of Kratom will save the state around 1.69 billion baht a year, as the state is spared the costs of arrests, prosecutions, and imprisonments from Kratom offenses. The last former leader of the radical communist Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia is denying charges of genocide. The Khmer Rouge brutally ruled Cambodia, which they renamed Kampuchea, from 1975 to 1979 and led to the death of between 2 to 3 million civilians. Some were killed in mass executions by the Khmer Rouge and some were tortured to death. Others died while they were forced to work in harsh living conditions. Some starved to death and some died due to illnesses that went untreated. Today, 90-year-old Q Sampan, the former head of state for the regime, is appealing a 2018 court ruling that convicted him of genocide and sentenced him to life in prison. Yesterday, in the UN-backed extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia, he denied the charges against him and said he never wanted to commit any crime against anyone. In the lower court, he claimed he was innocent and did not know about the genocide. The appeal ruling will be handed down next year. Sampan is the only surviving Khmer Rouge leader. That's all for the news ahead of the weekend, but be sure to stick around for various other content on our channel, including shows like Good Morning Thailand, Thaiger Bites, and real estate content. Thank you for watching, and you're now up to date on the Thaiger.